So hello, welcome back to the Roundup, a show by News of the Week, and I'm your host, Jake Whitwell. This is going to be it's not going to be similar at all. It's going to be very, very different to what we're used to with the episodes on here. Whereas before, it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday set out of news from across politics and then outside of politics as well, going into global news. I've had to stop with that a little bit and just transition. So what's happening instead is it's political news. It will be some global, some not. As I'm getting into it, this week will just be UK news. That's all I've got with me here. I'm so changing a little bit, changing how it looks and how it's recorded and how it's scripted. So it all flows a bit different. So this is still the roundup, still the same show, still the same premise, just a little bit different in terms of how it's going to work. So without further ado, I'll get into it. In UK politics, BBC News noted the unemployed could get weight loss jabs to help them to return to work. Starmer said he acknowledged more money was needed for the NHS and that the government needed to think differently in order to ease pressure on the health system. That's because the waiting lists are so high, and if they haven't come back down, even to pre-COVID levels or anything, so the waiting lists are high, there's a problem within the NHS. His comments echoed those of the Health Secretary Wes Streeting, who said that the long-term benefits of the drug could be monumental in helping the government tackle the obesity problem, which has been rising. I don't have the stats for it. Alongside this, the government have announced a 5-year trial of a weight loss drug called Mounjaro, I think. The parent company, Lilly, have announced. So his parent company have just put hundreds of millions of pounds into a trial to assess whether it can help reduce worklessness. As part of that trial, in the 150,000 people are supposed to receive the jab over the next 3 years, and the Health Secretary has suggested that that trial, and if that's successful, the jab could help reduce days lost to obesity-related sickness, the levels of which are currently high. Experts have said the type of policy that incentivises people to work based on their weight has previously not gone down well with the electorate, and that the experts said plans were based on economic potential rather than the people's needs, and so aren't focused on the right aspects in that regard. Lord Bethell said the NHS would have to make concrete steps to pivot to prevention so that the government isn't just simply medicalising the national obesity problem.
This is Jake in the future. Hello. Right. Part of the problem is that people feel that it diminishes responsibility on obese people who have made decisions to eat unhealthy food and therefore get fat. It's been quite well documented before that those criticisms are there. And, basically, people feel that they're having to pick up the bill and pick up the foot for the people that aren't taking responsibility and that are making bad decisions with their health. That's why I think that's what the experts do. I won't misrepresent their argument, but that's some of the general feeling around the medication and trials like this on the NHS. I know they tried one a few years ago and that didn't work either. So there is a bit of a historical thing like, it's not the best thing to try. However, they're trying it again. They've got obviously this trial's going on, so we'll see how that goes, and it will hopefully continue to be documented on News of the Week.
In other news, much has been made of the upcoming budget this week, which is coming on the 30th of October. There have been comments on it in the media this week. The Independent reported Reeves has warned the budget would be tough and that signalled a hike to national insurance rises. She offered some reassurances to businesses, saying it would not put off investment in the UK as it would offer firms long-term certainty, which they hadn't had under the Tories, according to her. The problem, of course, is that level of taxation, although consistent, will be consistently a higher one. So she's keeping the cap at 25%, apparently. We haven't seen yet. That's already in place for businesses. That's already in place for businesses earning over the £250,000 in profit, and that's already at 25% for those people. It decreases quite quickly, with a sliding rate going down to 19% when you only reach 50,000 in profit. So what could actually change is that the sliding rate and the thresholds at which you start paying lower tax She emphasised the impact that the £22 billion black hole, supposed £22 billion black hole, could have on this budget. You can read about that black hole to see why it's contentious and which bits of it were inherited or not. You can read about that on newsoftheweek.net. Other aspects of the budget this week discussed was the suggestion that Labour could extend an income tax threshold, which they previously called a stealth tax. The Sky News detailed government sources suggested they could prolong the freeze in income tax thresholds to 2030. It's currently at 28, 2-year extension. And that means that the tax thresholds do not rise with inflation, and that effectively pushes people into the higher rate of tax or into the next rate of tax because their earnings will go up, in most cases, in line with inflation. This is called fiscal drag, and it could raise £7 billion for the government, according to Financial Times. And Labour are defending this measure due to the wording in their manifesto. So they're saying it's not violating their manifesto, which of course they promised no tax on working people and no rises to income tax. They're defending their stance on it based on the language of the policy. The IFS, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, a think tank on economics research, said it would pull 400,000 people into paying income tax and a further 600,000 people into paying higher and additional rates of income tax. So that's how the 7 billion comes from. That's where it comes from. It's increasing that number of people paying the tax. LBC detailed Reeves has said the budget will help fix the NHS. According to the Times, she said to have signed off on a cash boost, which would bring down waiting lists. So this is in tandem with other things like the drug trials and stuff like that. So that's their overall goal. It was in their manifesto to hit a certain target with their waiting lists. And she's saying the budget will help fix it. And it could be a first in a series of steps which Labour have planned to deliver 40,000 more appointments and operations a week. So that would help bring down those waiting lists. NHS bosses have so far been unable to confirm that the increased spending alone will be enough for Labour's to deliver on their goals. This is due to staff pay increases and a continually older population, which make it harder to reach those targets. Obviously, because it requires more money for them to sustain the NHS.
So it's Jake from the future again. I was just reading or editing the episode, and I was on the bit talking about waiting lists and how the budget could help with that. Basically, Reeves is hoping that by spending more money on the NHS, investing more into the NHS, she can help bring waiting lists down by, I think it was providing more appointments. From what I can tell, like I sort of alluded to in the script, is that extra money could, on the basis of what those bosses have said, be allotted to helping fund the wage increases, which of course were supposed to already be funded. And that's not me picking up, that's just an inference. I could be wrong there, but that's what it looks like. Like I said earlier on, it's in conjunction with other schemes as well. They're not pinning the investment they're getting from this budget onto that. For them, a first step in a wider series. So we'll see how it goes.
The Telegraph also observed that Rachel Reeves is set to raise inheritance tax in her budget, and according to them, Reeves could be considering a range of measures that look at altering reliefs and tax exemptions. That they could also lower the threshold at which it becomes payable. I think that's currently at 40% at anything inherited worth over £325,000. It doesn't look like any of those changes are expected to be actual tax rates, so the 40% likely won't change. And that could be because the measures are unpopular with the public, because the tax itself seems unfair by most of the public. BBC News also reported a Tory politician's wife has been jailed for a race hate post in relation to the UK riots that happened a few weeks ago, or almost 2 months ago now. Lucy Connolly, the wife of a Conservative councillor, has been jailed for 31 months after calling for hotels housing asylum seekers to be set on fire. She reported a Tory politician, I'm reading the wrong paragraph, she said this on the day of the Southport attack in a tweet, and I should really read the script. 41-year-old said this on the day of the Southport attacks, which were at the time attributed to asylum seekers. So she said it in the immediate aftermath, which makes it, anyway. She also called for mass deportation, and she said, if that makes me a racist, so be it. Her defence centred around the post coming from before the riots, like I just said, because it didn't happen in conjunction with outright violence, or it didn't follow or precede her own violence. This and other mitigation measures were considered by the judge, and that's likely reflected in her only having to serve 40% of her sentence before being released on licence. The Standard reported Sir Keir Starmer has sparked backlash after removing a portrait of William Shakespeare from number 10. A Downing Street official has said the PM's office does not comment on the choice of paintings that are hung by the PM. Of course, each Prime Minister has power over what they decorate their office with, so they strictly don't need to comment on it. Labour have defended the changes, saying that they've been planned for a long time, and they have been timed to celebrate the creation of the GAC, the Government Art Collection, so that hinting that the Conservatives, or at least them prior to getting into government, had planned to change the furniture, if you like. With this coming at the removal, amid the removal of other paintings of other leaders and people like Thatcher and Gladstone, the new decisions have drew criticism from Tory politicians, particularly from Tory politicians. The former Culture Secretary, Oliver Dowden, said the PM spent the election loudly proclaiming his patriotism, but has turned to the usual left-wing cringing embarrassment about our past, criticising his stance on taking them down. I think they were replaced with a feature around female empowerment. Robert Jenrick also chipped in, saying we should celebrate and extol figures in English history and stop being embarrassed about our identity, adding that no other country would behave like this. Starr hasn't really given a reason, like I said, on why the paintings are moved to storage, other than that the Thatcher one he removed earlier on in his leadership was done so because he didn't feel comfortable with a painting staring at him. You can imagine being quite unnerving in front of him. But it's been speculated since the removals that they're for links to colonisation and slavery. Many of the figures that were removed do, so that could be a plausible thing, although that is just speculation. So it marks the end of the roundup for this week. It's very much this is a trial run. I'm trying to get it perfect so I can continue doing it while I'm in uni. I'm assuming it'll get longer and it will sort of fluctuate for the next few weeks, but hopefully it means I can be more consistent with it. So thank you for bearing with me. Thank you for listening, and I hope you found it useful. Cheers. See you next week.